I was born on a stormy night, one of those nights that seem to swallow the world in darkness, as if the heavens themselves were trying to erase the pain of what was happening below. The thunder roared in the distance, and the rain came down in sheets. My first cries echoed in the small, sparsely furnished room, a stark contrast to the loud, harsh weather outside. But my cries weren't enough. Not enough to wake my mother from the haze of her own decisions, not enough to stop the tragedy that was already unfolding. When I opened my eyes for the first time, there was no warm smile waiting for me. No tender hands to hold me, to comfort me, to tell me everything would be okay. I was simply handed over, like an item, a thing to be dealt with. That's the way it happened. I was sold. At the age of a few hours, my parents, Farzana and Jamil, made a deal that would haunt my existence forever. They sold me for a plot of land, a small, barren stretch of land on the outskirts of our village. A deal brokered in the quiet of the night, a transaction that didn't involve love, hope, or dreams. Only dirt. I never understood what happened that night. How could anyone sell their child? How could a mother, who gave birth to me, stand by and allow her own flesh and blood to be traded away? I grew up with a different family, Maria and Leo, who purchased me for a price I would never know. They were not wealthy people. They lived in a small house, and their life was simple, modest, even, but it was full of warmth and care. They treated me like their own child, giving me everything they could. They loved me, not because of any obligation, but because they chose to. It wasn't until I was 13 that the truth came out. Leo, my adoptive father, sat me down one evening, his voice trembling as he spoke. "There's something you need to know," he began, his face pale. "You were bought. Your parents sold you to us when you were just a baby." At first, I didn't understand. How could they do that? But the more Leo explained, the clearer it became. They didn't want me. I was a burden, nothing more than an unwanted mouth to feed in a house already stretched thin. "Your mother, she didn't want this," Leo said. "But your father insisted. He said a daughter was a curse. It was either you or the land." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My world spun, and I felt sick to my stomach. I was nothing more than a commodity to them, a thing to be discarded for something as trivial as land. And so, I grew up with this wound inside me, carried with me through every moment of my life. There was always a part of me that wondered why they had given me away, why I was not enough. No matter how much love Maria and Leo showed me, it wasn't the same. I could never forget the cold, heartless truth. As I got older, I channeled the anger and pain into ambition. I studied relentlessly, got a scholarship to a top university, and built a small business. I worked harder than anyone I knew, driven by the need to prove my worth, to show the world that I was more than just the daughter who was sold for a piece of land. But no amount of success could heal the wound in my heart. When I turned 25, something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep running from the truth. I needed answers. I had to confront them, my real parents. And so, I went back to the village. Returning to Berwala was like stepping into a different time. The roads were still cracked, the air thick with dust, and the same goats roamed the streets. The village hadn't changed. But I had. I stood in front of the house. It was a stark contrast to the rest of the village, 2 stories tall, with gleaming yellow walls and neatly trimmed hedges. The land my parents had traded me for was now the foundation of their life. The house gleamed with wealth, with everything I had never had, a family, a home, a future. And I had nothing but the scars of their betrayal. The door opened, and a young boy appeared. He stared at me curiously. "Who are you looking for?" he asked. "Jamil," I replied. He darted back inside. Moments later, my mother stepped out, her face pale and drained of all color. Her eyes widened when they locked with mine. I could see the recognition on her face, the moment she realized who I was. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You look just like someone." "I do," I said, my voice ice cold. "I'm your daughter." Her breath caught in her throat. The words seemed to hang between us, heavy, like they had been trapped for years. Jamil appeared behind her. His eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of recognition there as well, followed by something else, fear. "You," he said, his voice flat. "You found us." "I did," I replied, fighting the urge to scream. "And I'm not leaving until I get some answers." Jamil didn't flinch. He just stepped aside and gestured for me to come in. "You've come this far," he said, his voice cold. I stepped inside, my heart pounding in my chest. The house was beautiful, luxurious even. It was a far cry from the shabby little village hut I had grown up in. I couldn't believe this was the place they had built on my back. We sat down in the living room. It was immaculate, decorated with pictures of their life, of family vacations, of happy moments that could have been mine. But instead, they were just images of a life I was never part of. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Why did you do it? Why did you sell me?" Jamil's eyes darkened. "You were a girl. We couldn't afford to feed another mouth. Land was the only thing that could secure our future." I felt my blood boil. "So, I was just a burden to you?" I spat, my anger rising. A worthless daughter to be traded for land? Jamil's gaze never wavered. "It wasn't like that. We did what we had to do." "And what about me?" I cried, tears stinging my eyes. "Did you even think about me? About what this would do to me? Did you even love me?" Farzana finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to keep you. But your father, he insisted. He said it was either you or the land. He said a daughter was a curse." I shook my head, disbelief flooding my chest. "A curse? A curse? You don't understand," Jamil said, his voice rising. "We were poor. The land gave us hope. You could have died here. I made the choice that would give us a future. Your choice," I said through gritted teeth, "was to destroy me." I reached into my bag, my hand trembling, and pulled out a file. I slapped it down on the table. "I did some digging," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. "You didn't just sell me for land, Jamil. You sold me for the price of your future. But now? Now the land is mine." Jamil's eyes widened. "That's not possible," he whispered. I smiled bitterly. "Oh, it's possible. The land you sold me for, the plot of dirt you decided I wasn't worth, it's in my name now. Legally." His face drained of color. "You don't know what you're talking about." But I could see it in his eyes. He knew. He knew I had him cornered. I leaned forward, the truth heavy on my tongue. "I'm taking that land back," I said. "And I'll build something there, something for girls like me. Girls who were abandoned, who were sold, who were thrown away. I'll build a shelter, a place where they can find hope." Jamil didn't move. He didn't speak. He just sat there, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Farzana began to cry silently, her shoulders shaking. I stood up, my heart pounding, the need for closure burning in my chest. "I don't want your pity," I said coldly. "I don't want your money. I don't want your house. But I will take the land. And I'll turn it into something that matters." I turned to leave, my chest tight with emotion. As I reached the door, I looked back one last time. "You sold me for land. And now I'm back to take what's mine." As I walked out the door, the weight of what had just happened pressed heavily on my shoulders. The land, once a symbol of my abandonment, was now my leverage, my power. I had come back to confront my parents, to force them to look into my eyes and see the person I had become, a woman who was stronger than the pain of their betrayal, who had turned that pain into her power. The quiet of the village seemed almost mocking as I walked down the road, the wind tugging at my clothes, as if urging me to keep going. The night sky stretched above me, vast and empty, yet full of possibilities. It had taken years of pain, of suffering, of quiet desperation. But now I had the upper hand. I had the land, my land, and with it, I had a voice that couldn't be silenced. I wasn't the helpless girl they had sold off. I wasn't just a transaction on a piece of paper. I was someone. When I reached the edge of the village, I turned around and looked back at the house one last time. It seemed different now, smaller somehow. The grandeur, the luxury, it all felt so insignificant. They had built their lives on the land they had stolen from me, but now it belonged to me. And as I stood there, I made a silent vow. I would take that land and build something that would honor the girls like me, girls who had been discarded, forgotten, and treated as burdens. I would create a sanctuary for them. A place where they could find hope, where they could find strength, just as I had. The thought of it filled me with a sense of purpose. The house they had built on my pain would one day be overshadowed by a foundation of love and hope. And when that day came, my parents would know what I had become, and they would regret the day they had sold me for a plot of dirt. But for now, I had to leave them behind. The confrontation was over. The truth had been spoken. The past had been revealed. And the future? That was in my hands now. As I walked away, the weight of the past finally began to lift. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their forgiveness. All I needed was the land, and the life I was going to build with it. I was no longer the girl they had abandoned. I was no longer the one they had sold. I was someone who had come back to claim her place in the world. And this time, nothing could take that away from me.